Today's lecture is about a very brief introduction to the mathematical aspect of a few collection of kernels. So this is the section called Green, Mercer, Herglotz, Bochner, and Freins. And this will be a brief introduction in the sense that this is a very long section with lots of mathematical content. There are about 120 slides just right there. So we could typically spend a few hours on this topic, but what I want is to do a very sort of an accelerated overview. I'm not going to present all of the slides, but just to focus on a few main ideas. So I'm going to skip lots of things, but hopefully I will still be able to give you a few important ideas that show that there is a very rich mathematical formalism in the kernel literature that recovers things that you may have seen in different contexts. So in particular, I will start with this section about green kernels, and which is very important because this is a part that shows that we can explicitly relate the degree of smoothness of a function to specific choices of kernels. So if you remember, we motivated the need for an RKHS norm because it would encourage small variations of a specific function according to a metric induced by a kernel function. But if you simply consider regular functions, let's say real valued functions that take arguments from some, let's say, Euclidean space, there is something very natural to quantify the smoothness of a function, which is to consider a norm, here it's an L2 norm, on some derivatives or combinations of derivatives of your function. More generally, we would be interested in penalizing the norm of a differential operator applied to your function. So consider, for example, these types of regression problem where you explore a particular space. You want to find a prediction function such that the f of xi are close to your labels yi. What if you want to penalize the second derivative of your function? So this is something very natural, which is related to what we call Sobolev spaces. And in particular, this is what is called the Sobolev norm that you may have seen in a different context. What we are going to see is that these types of approaches can be addressed easily using the concept of RKHS. And this is nice because now I can explicitly say that I'm penalizing something related to the mathematical definition of the smoothness of the function. So we are going to make a general link between RKHS and something called the green functions defined by differential operators. So let us consider a simple example that may look complicated, but you will see that it is related to a very simple kernel function. So that's also something interesting. You can choose a kernel which is extremely simple. It gives you an RKHS, which is pretty rich. So here, consider the functions defined on some interval 0, 1, which are called absolutely continuous. So it means it's something slightly weaker than differentiability. It means that they can be written as an integral form using a function f prime, which is a derivative of the function. Mostly your function f will be differentiable almost everywhere. And if you don't know the definition, it's also given in one of the next slides if you want to know more about this. So consider this space of function h such that f of 0 is equal to 0. You may see why it's important later. And consider this bilinear form, which in fact will be an inner product. So let us call it an inner product, which is in fact the inner product in L2 of these derivatives f prime and g prime. So indeed, now if I consider this quantity, when I evaluate this bilinear form between f and f, what I get is exactly the square norm in L2 of the derivative of f, meaning this is something that encourages smoothness in f. if I use this as a penalty. Here is an interesting result. So it turns out that this previous space of functions is in fact an RKHS, and the reproducing kernel is simply the mean kernel. If you consider x and y in the 0-1 interval, k of xy is equal to the mean of x and y. This is what I was meaning by saying that a very basic function like this would give you, in fact, an RKHS, which is pretty rich, which is the one from this particular slide. And choosing this specific kernel will, in fact, allow you to learn machine learning problems that penalize the derivative of your function. This is exactly what is written here. Now, the RKHS norm of a function f that lives in this space H is simply the L2 norm of the derivative f prime. Meaning that if you consider this optimization problem, you want to find a function f in the RKHS and you want to penalize the L2 norm of the derivative, then simply what you do is simply kernel ridge regression using the mean kernel. So that seems to be very nice because it gives you a methodology to learn this optimization problem in this, what we call Sobolev spaces. Let us skip this slide. We could spend a bit of time proving this, but I'm not going to do this because I want to do a brief overview. What I will simply do is comment on the last technical point, which is on slide in a few slides. So this is what we need to show to prove this, this result. First, you need to show that H is a Hilbert space of functions. Then you need to show that the functions kx live in H, and then you need to show that we have the reproducing property. So let us briefly look at these two last points. First, does the mean kernel function kx live in this space? What is kx? Remember that kx of y is simply k of xy, which is the mean of x and y. For a given point s here, so it should be x, but anyway, we changed a bit the notation here. It's simply a function which is like this, which is flat for every point which is greater than s. So that means that indeed it's a function which such that kx of 0 is equal to 0. It's also absolutely continuous, and the derivative, it's differentiable almost everywhere, and the derivatives are simply here the identity function when you are below s, and it's constant, it's equal to 0 above it. And this, if we look at the need to get the reproducing property, you will see exactly why this derivative is something nice that it will give us the reproducing property. So what is the reproducing property? We compute the inner product between f and kx, which is by definition of this Hilbert space H, the L2 inner product between f prime and the derivative of k prime. And remember that the derivative of k prime is the identity function if u is smaller than x and 0 otherwise, meaning that this quantity here is nothing else than the integral between 0 and x of f prime. And since, and here immediately we know that this quantity is equal to f of x minus f of 0. But remember that one of the conditions that was stated in the definition of H was that f of 0 was equal to 0. So this is why we needed this condition. And now what we have is exactly the reproducing property. At the end, if you follow the few steps that I skipped as well before that, we show simply that H is indeed the reproducing kernel of the, that K is the reproducing kernel of the RKHS H. So now, if we want to make this a bit more general, what can we do? We see that this definition of K was related to a property of the derivative of K. And in fact, we wanted here to penalize the derivative of our prediction function f. But more generally, what we may be interested in is to penalize, to instead of simply using the derivative, to use something more general, which is a differential operator D. So consider, as before, that the input space is Rd. And we can also define the class of function that have these inner products that are simply the L2 inner products between df and dg, where d is the differential operator, as soon as you add the few necessary assumptions such that all of these quantities exist. Then you get that this is a Hilbert space of function. You can also show that after a few steps. And H is in fact an RKHS that admits a particular reproducing kernel, which we call the green function of the operator d star d, where d star is the adjoint operator of d, which is a linear operator. This may be a bit abstract. And again, I just want to do a very short introduction and give you the main idea. So remember, the first idea was that with RKHS, we can also penalize various derivatives of the prediction functions by using a specific kernel. And here the second idea is that this specific kernel is related to the differential operator. So now, of course, what is and this relation is here, it's the fact that the reproducing kernel is the green function of this operator here. Now, what does it mean? It means that K is in fact related to a way of solving a differential equation. So it may seem a bit weird, but consider the basic differential equation that says on H, I want to find the solution of this equation. I want to find G such that given F is equal to D times G. And G is the unknown here. It turns out that in the literature of differential equations, there is something very classical, which is to look for solutions that have this specific form where G of X can be written as an integral of some function K, which will be here our kernel function, but in the literature of differential equation, this is not here yet related to some RKHS, where we have a function K of xy times f of y. So this is a sort of convolution, if you like, using a kernel function K. Then if for some function K, you define G of X like this, if you want to have the reproducing property, if you want to have G to be a solution of this differential equation, then for all X, you need to have f of X to be equal to dg of X. So dg of X, what this is the differential operator applied to this this function defined as an integral here. If you make, again, the right assumptions, you can put inside the differential operator that will apply to K, such that this quantity here can be written as the L2 inner product between dkx and f. And if such a K exists, then it is called the green function of the operator. So now in the context of RKHS, remember that the green function is the green function we're interested in is the one associated to d star d. So this is something we could derive, in fact, and I will skip this. Here, I just want to state the main result, just to tell you that this is possible to build a kernel function that allows you to both solve these differential equations and also then to learn in the corresponding space that will penalize the derivatives of your functions. And this is something we could do with the min kernel. With the min kernel, we could either do a direct proof as we did, or you could also follow these different steps. So here I'm going to go very fast, but if we consider this differential equation where df of u is simply f prime of u, if we want to have f of x to be equal to d star dkx to the inner product, L2 inner product between d star dkx and f, so because d star is the adjoint operator of d, we can simply put d on the right and we get the L2 inner product between dkx and df, and we get that necessary f of x is equal to the integral of k prime x of u, f prime of u du. And remember that if you want to have this, and your space of function is such that f of 0 is equal to 0, you simply need to have k prime to be the indicator function of u smaller than x. Okay? If you simply integrate this, you get the mean function. Okay. So again, let me recap what happened here, because I know it's a very short way of introducing this important concept. You want to learn in a Sobolev space that is associated to a particular differential operator. We did it explicitly for the mean kernel that will corresponding to penalizing the derivative of f. If you have a more general differential operator, then you can follow these sort of steps to obtain a kernel, and then you can do kernel ridge regression to simply learn in the Sobolev space. Of course, this is not necessarily easy, because when d was the derivative, it was easy to follow these steps and get the mean kernel. But you may see, for example, maybe in some homework, that this is not always that easy to obtain the corresponding green function given a specific differential operator. That may be very complicated to do. But in some cases, we can do it and simply use everything we did so far to learn in these particular spaces. And again, one of the important messages is that here explicitly, the concept of RKHS is related to the concept of smoothness of the functions. Okay. Okay, so that was quite fast for green kernel, so that I hope that you get the main idea at least. But there are also other concepts of smoothness that appear in the literature. And in the literature of kernel methods, you see very often the term of Mercer kernels. So this is something important to introduce. Also, this is something important for historical reasons, because Mercer was the first to provide a proof that a positive definite kernel is an inner product when the input space is non-finite. Remember, we did that for the most, we proved this result for the most general case, but Mercer did it in a particular case, which was the case where X was a compact metric space. Typically, simply think about this as a bounded subset of RD, okay, which is closed. We also need here some continuity of the kernel function, which is fine, because very often we consider kernel functions that are continuous, which is also positive definite. And let us simply state, I mean, it's both a statement and a sketch of proof. Actually, the sketch of proof is using a big hammer in the math literature, which is called the spectral theorem. But what are the main ideas and what are the main features of these kernels? It turns out, let us jump directly to the point 4, that given the previous assumptions that are made on K and X, so remember the assumptions are the continuity of this positive continuity property of this positive definite kernel K, the fact that the input space is compact. If you are in this situation, it turns out that it is possible to factorize your kernel function. And factorize in the sense that K of xt can be decomposed over a basis of eigenfunctions. Okay. So this is here an infinite sum. This lambda k are eigenvalues, and this psi k are eigenfunctions. I must admit that if you never did eigenvalue decompositions of functions, this may be a bit abstract, but think again about the finite case. In the finite case, K is exactly defined by a kernel matrix. And when it is positive definite, we can decompose it onto a set of eigenvectors. And basically, this decomposition of eigenvectors can be written as a finite sum of lambda k, uk transpose. Okay, remember this notation that we may have used a few times. Here, it's exactly the same, except that k is now, x is not finite, so k becomes simply a function of two arguments. But we can still use this so-called spectral theorem to say that there exists a decomposition into a similar decomposition with now an infinite sum over eigenfunctions and eigenvalues. And these eigenvalues are non-negative for positive definite functions k. So this is simply the extension of eigenvalue decomposition for matrices to this positive definite functions k. Okay. And why is it an inner product? Well, simply you should now be familiar with the inner product in L2 for functions, but you also know the inner product for sequences. If you have two sequences, AK and BK, if the infinite sum of the sum of the AK BK converges, you can define an inner product on the space of sequences. And let us, since I don't want to go into mathematical details and simply present the main ideas, let us jump to this particular slide, which is called the Mercer theorem. So this is nothing else than what I said before, except that there are a few precise mathematical statements. But if we want to leave aside the mathematical details, okay, K is again a compact metric space. It turns out that eigenvalues and eigenvectors for this sort of a positive definite functions is related to a particular choice of measure, but simply think in terms of Lebesgue measure. If you are not familiar with that, it's not really a problem here. K is a continuous positive definite kernel. Then we can simply compute the eigenvectors and eigenfunctions of this called the linear operator Lk, which was defined before. But for us, it simply means that we have a set of functions psi that are continuous, such that k of xt can be decomposed as an infinite sum. So this is nothing else than before, but I wanted to spend at least 1 minute on this slide because this is the important result that we call Mercer theorem. And now let us jump again to a corollary. Let us skip proofs and technical details. This is now the important corollary. The important corollary is that if you have a Mercer kernel, then there exists a mapping phi that will map an input data point to an infinite sequence that contains the values, the square root of the lambda k times psi k of x, where psi k are the eigenfunctions, lambda k are the eigenvalues. And now our kernel k of xt is simply the inner product in this Hilbert space of sequences between phi x and phi t. And L2, remember this L2 with this small l notation denotes the Hilbert space of sequences such that the sum of the UK squared converges, and the inner product, like I said before, is defined as the sum of the UK VK for two sequences U and V. So this is important because it gives us some intuition about what we are doing when we have a Mercer kernel. In fact, we also have an explicit mapping, which is infinite dimensional here, but this is still a mapping to a sequence. So we map input points to a sequence. And we have this explicit mapping where simply what we do is that we represent a point x as the evaluation of eigenfunctions at x rescaled by the square root of the eigenvalues. Yet, this is an important result, but what is more important to us is why this Mercer kernel are also related to the concept of smoothness. Because this is so far the main message of this part. I want to show you different contexts where we can choose a particular kernel. And in fact, when we penalize using the RKHS norm, we're exactly penalizing some concept of smoothness of these functions. In the case of green kernels, that was easy because we were explicitly penalizing the norm of some derivatives of the functions f. Here, it's not very clear because I have not presented you yet the RKHS corresponding to the Mercer kernel. So let us jump to the result again. So again, it's going a bit fast, but let us try to keep simply a few main ideas. And in fact, what I want is not this slide, it's actually this one. This one is simply a theorem that tells us that for a Mercer kernel, we can explicitly characterize the RKHS. As soon as you are able to provide an eigenvalue decomposition, eigenfunction decomposition of a positive definite kernel. So assuming that all eigenvalues are positive, of course, it's in fact the case if are strictly positive, it would mean in French, some people call that French positive. The RKHS is the Hilbert space of linear combination of the eigenfunctions. So this is not really surprising because the eigenfunctions form an orthonormal basis of the space. And at least since these eigenfunctions are orthogonal to each other, we don't have an issue about non-uniqueness of the expansions coefficient. So any function f can be written exactly in a unique manner as a linear combination of ai psi I. But we want to have this sum of this ak squared divided by lambda k to be converging. So here, you may not see immediately why we have this lambda k on the denominator. So let us simply remove it a bit from your head at this point. Simply see that we are not considering any possible expansions. We want to have functions that have a finite norm such that we need to control the convergence rate of these sequences AK. And this is one of the key aspects of the characterization of RKHS for Mercer kernels is the rate of decay of these coefficients AK squared. So now what is the inner product for two functions f? Let's consider a linear combination of AK psi k and g, a linear combination of bk psi k. This is simply the sum of AK bk divided by lambda k. So again, we see that here, what is also interesting to see is that, remember that the input points, we are representing them as sequences, in the case as infinite sequences. This is also the case of every function f of the RKHS because we have an orthonormal basis of this space here. We assume here that the eigenvalues, none of them are 0. We can do everything in a similar manner if some of them are 0. It just adds a few technical details, but it does not really matter for us. What matters for us is that a function f will be in the RKHS if, when we are represented as a linear combination of eigenfunctions, we have a sequence that decreases fast enough. Now, why is this related to smoothness? Simply because when we do eigenvalue decompositions, very often the first eigenfunctions that are associated to the largest eigenvalue correspond to components of the functions that have a low frequency. This is something which is relatively classical. In particular, we can also show, but I won't do it, that if you consider particular spaces of periodic functions, we can also find eigenfunctions that are sinusoids. And when you order these sinusoids, you will order them by frequency. First, low frequency, and then higher and higher frequencies. And so what does it mean to have a function that have mainly low frequencies? It means a function that has slow variation, which is smooth. There is also a way to relate this more precisely to the norms on derivatives of the functions. Again, I'm not going to do this, and I'm not the best person to do it. But we have here also a case where we can relate explicitly the smoothness of a specific function. So this is here the norm of f. So relate the RKHS norm to the degrees of smoothness in some way. So here it's more penalizing high frequencies in the function, simply because these coefficients ak squared need to converge fast to 0 if we want this infinite sum to be finite. And there are many examples in these slides that I'm going to skip because, again, this is, like I told you, it's a very short introduction to a collection of kernels. So now we had green kernels, we had Mercer kernels, and I want to make a remark. I'm going to skip this part and go directly here. Well, before with kernels, with Mercer kernels, we have this explicit decomposition of function on these eigenfunctions, but we assume that X is compact. But we're also interested in many cases where this is not the case. For example, if you simply take X to be RD, well, the eigenvalues of the linear operator, which is induced by K, defined here, are not necessarily countable, meaning that we cannot apply Mercer theorem and we cannot write K of xt as this infinite sum that involves the eigenfunctions. So this may be a problem, but in fact, we can also extend these results and take a slightly different point of view and obtain something very similar that involves the explicit concept of frequencies by using the Fourier transform. So for that, we consider kernels that have a particular form, which are called shift invariant, meaning K of xy here can be written as a quantity that depends only on the difference between the two arguments, x and y. This is interesting because it covers many existing kernels that you may have seen. For example, the Gaussian kernel falls into this category. So that means that what I'm going to do here will also give you some intuition about what you are doing when you use the Gaussian kernel from a mathematical point of view. Let me skip this one and let us go to slide 300. Again, like you see, these are slides that are not designed for a 45 minutes presentation. So I'm going to do this to accelerate quite a bit and focus only on a few big ideas. Just in case, if you don't remember what is the Fourier transform of a function f, consider a function f which is in L1 of Rd. Very often we consider functions in L2. Here it's simply in L1. Then the Fourier transform f hat of W is defined as the integral over Rd of f of x times the complex sinusoid function here that involves this frequency W. So this is something very classical in signal processing. So if you have taken a signal processing class, for sure you have seen the Fourier transform. You have seen as well discrete variants of the Fourier transform. Here we consider the continuous case. There are interesting properties of the Fourier transform, meaning that, well, if a few assumptions hold, such that f hat is also in L1, then the inverse Fourier formula holds, meaning from f hat you can recover f. So it is exactly the same formula as before, except that you consider here the conjugate of the previous sinusoidal function, and we have this normalization factor here. We also have a relation between some concept of norms of f in Rd and some concept of norms of f hat in the frequency space up to this normalization factor. Okay, let us now move to this slide here. So let us be a bit more general and consider indeed kernels that are called shift invariant, that are simply kernels that depends on the difference between the two arguments. And we are going to extend the terminology of positive definite functions on K on the function phi. We will call phi to be positive definite if this corresponding kernel K is also positive definite. And what we can show, and which is interesting, is that we have this important result by Bochner, which is that a continuous function phi is positive definite if and only if it is the Fourier transform of a symmetric and positive finite measure. let us forget a bit about these notations and really think in terms of Lebesgue measure if you want to get some intuition about what is going on here. And this is a result which is in fact non-trivial. And the reason why this section is so long is in fact that at some point, I mean, a long time ago, the section was shorter, but I remember that Jean-Philippe Vert wanted to have a proof in the course about Bochner theorem. So for that, the section has expanded quite a lot to be able to have the proof of this theorem in the slides, so which is nice. For us, we are not going to go through the proof. We are still going to go, you see that there is an if and only if. We are still going to study one side of this if and only if. And as always, when you have to prove an equivalence, there is one side which is very easy to show and one side which is extremely difficult. In that case, we are going to look at the easy side because it gives, I think it gives some intuition. And again, consider the case of a Lebesgue measure, always here to simplify things. Let us consider a set of scalar values. Let us consider them in R here. If we want to show that our kernel is positive definite, let us compute a double sum of some zi, zj, phi of xi minus xj. Because phi is the Fourier transform of some measure mu, we can write phi of xi minus xj as the integral of some complex sinusoid involving xi and xj and d mu. And you can also think about a measure that has a density with respect to the Lebesgue measure to simplify things. That's something we're going to do later anyway. But in both cases, this integral function, there is something nice with this product with the complex sinusoid is that we can decompose this into a product of two terms, one that depends on xi and one that depends on xj. Remember that this is something we do all the time to prove that a kernel is positive definite. And so if you do that, you can move the double sum inside, group the zi with the xi, group the zj with the xj, and at the end, you get simply an integral of the square of a complex modulus here, meaning you get simply a non-negative value, and you can show that your kernel is positive definite. So that was the easy side. But the main idea is that if you have this, if phi is the Fourier transform of some positive measure, then in fact you can decouple xi and xj and write this almost as an inner product. Okay. So then next slide I want to comment will be this one. So this one is a slide which is again a bit complicated, but that will conclude this part on this very short introduction about Green, Mercer, and I would call that Fourier or Bochner kernels, in fact translation invariant kernels. If K is a translation invariant positive definite kernel such that phi is integrable on Rd as well as the Fourier transform, phi hat. If you consider the subset of L2 of Rd that consists of integrable and continuous functions f such that this quantity here is finite. So what is this quantity? It's something that is written as a norm. We are going to show that, I'm not going to give you the proof, but in fact, it's possible to show that H will be a Hilbert space, that this is a norm, and below we have the inner product. So let us look at what the norm here. The norm is this normalization factor, and this is the integral of the square of this complex modulus of the Fourier transform divided by phi hat of W. And dW here is simply the Lebesgue, it's simply here the Lebesgue measure with respect to W. So remember that we wanted the Fourier transform to be positive. So this is nice because it means that to be real, and this is here a real quantity which is also positive. This is nice because it allows us to have a quantity which is also a real value. And when this integral converges, then f is in the RKHS. So at this point, if I was only mentioning this, it would be a bit hard to interpret, but remember that we had a formula which was very similar before. When did we have this formula? It was when we were discussing the RKHS of Mercer's kernel. So remember that, and I'm going to compare both of them in a few seconds. But in Mercer kernels, we had a function f that will be in the RKHS if its decomposition on the eigenfunctions would have a coefficients that decrease fast enough, such that we had an infinite sum that would be finite. Here, what does it mean to have f that can be written as a inverse Fourier transform? It means as well that we can also decompose f in terms of frequencies, and that on this other space, after decomposing f on frequencies, we need to have these frequencies that decrease fast enough, meaning the modulus of the Fourier transform of f evaluated on W, this quantity here needs to be decreased fast enough when we compare it to phi hat, such that this integral converges. So there is something really similar here, and if you understood Mercer, it's easy to get some intuition about this part. I will still comment a bit more about this, but before that, let us simply give 3 examples of shift invariant kernels. And then I will simply recap the differences between Mercer and Fourier, and we'll see that there are lots of relations between them. So Gaussian kernel, consider it in simply for real values here. If you remember your classes, your signal processing classes, you remember that the Fourier transform of a Gaussian function is the Gaussian function. So this is nice. You can do the math yourself and observe that this coefficient sigma squared here becomes go from the denominator here to the numerator here. And what is the corresponding Hilbert space, the corresponding RKHS according to the previous theorem? This is the set of functions f, such that if I compute this integral here, I get a finite value. So what is this integral? It involves the modulus of the Fourier transform of f squared times this exponential function of w times sigma squared. So there are 2 important consequences of this characterization. One of them is that if you have a function of w here, and here you have something that grows exponentially fast with w, if you want this integral to be finite, you need that, basically you need this quantity here to decrease faster than this one, meaning this has to decrease more or less exponentially fast. And what can you say if you take classes about Fourier harmonic analysis, Fourier transform, and so on? What can you say about a function whose Fourier transform decreases exponentially fast? You can show that this corresponds to functions that are infinitely differentiable with all derivatives that are squared integrable. Again, this is a nice thing because here, this is where we show that the RKHS norm, which is this quantity, is in fact related to the smoothness of the function because of this. Simply because it tells us that if you want to have a small norm, then we need to have these frequencies that decrease exponentially fast. And again, like I told you for Mercer kernels, when you have low frequencies, it means that you have a part of the function with slow variations. The part which is not smooth, which has high variations, correspond to high frequencies. And what else can we say? We can simply see that this function, this quantity here, is actually increasing with sigma. So what does it mean? It means that the RKHS of the Gaussian kernel also depends on sigma. And what is the effect of choosing a larger sigma? It has also the effect of reducing the size of the RKHS. So that's why if you use a larger sigma, you are penalizing more, you are encouraging more the smoothness of the function. So that's why sigma is also a regularization parameter when you do machine learning using the Gaussian kernel. So I think that this slide is important because it allows you to understand what you are doing when you use the Gaussian kernel, which is something we do all the time. Now simply look at also the effect of choosing a different kernel. So let us choose what is called the Laplace kernel. It's almost the same as the Gaussian kernel, except that instead of having this Euclidean norm here, we have the L1 norm between x and y. It is also possible to show as an exercise that the Fourier transform of this function is simply this function, which depends on the coefficient gamma, which is in gamma over gamma squared plus omega squared, where omega is the frequency. So that means that the corresponding RKHS is the set of functions such that this norm here is finite, meaning the integral of the squared modulus of the Fourier transform times this quadratic function, this integral is finite. So you see that in fact, you see that this grows quadratically. Before, using the Gaussian kernel, we had something that grows exponentially fast, meaning that we are penalizing less. I mean, the effect on the smoothness inducing effect is smaller than with the Gaussian kernel. In fact, this would correspond to a set of functions that are differentiable with derivatives in L2. It's in fact a Sobolev norm. This is where we can also relate this part on the translation invariant kernel and Fourier with the first part on the green kernels. We can also do that using this other function, which is very classical in signal processing. This one here, the corresponding RKHS corresponds simply to functions whose spectrum is exactly included in some interval, meaning it doesn't have high frequencies. And you can do that with many other types of shift invariant kernels. So let us recap what we did. What I wanted to show here is study mathematical aspect of 3 important classes of kernels that lead to RKHS norms that penalize the smoothness of the functions from different point of views. For green kernels, the kernel was the green function of some differential operator. The RKHS was simply basically L2 with a specific inner product, which was simply the inner product between df and dj for 2 functions f and g. If I go to the next slide, the norm, the RKHS norm was simply the L2 norm of some derivatives of f. If I look at Mercer, there are specific conditions not stated in this slide that allows me to decompose the kernel function as an expansion of eigenvalues times product of eigenfunctions evaluated at x and y for some k of xy. We could show that the RKHS was the linear combination of eigenfunctions such that these coefficients here will decrease fast enough with respect to the sequence of eigenvalues lambda k. And we had a very similar formula below for translation invariant kernels that can be written as k of x minus y. And k of x minus y can basically be written up to a factor as the integral over some frequencies w of a quantity that involves the Fourier transform of kappa times a product of sinusoids functions. So at the end, the RKHS was also the set of L2 functions plus that satisfy a few mathematical properties such that this quantity, when it is well defined, is finite. Again, we could see that before we had something that will encourage functions that where the coefficients ak will decrease fast enough. Here it's simply the modulus of the Fourier transform, basically the energy corresponding to every frequency that has to decrease fast enough with the frequency. Fast enough with respect to this Fourier transform kappa hat of w. And the corresponding norms Well, before, for Mercer, it is the sum of the ak squared divided by lambda k. And here, this is the integral of the Fourier transform modulus squared. You see that there is almost a one-to-one correspondence between Mercer and Fourier, divided by the Fourier transform of kappa. So that concludes this part, which was a bit heavy because this is we typically spend 3 hours to do a detailed analysis of all of this. And I wanted to do something much faster, but I hope that we can still get the big ideas about the fact that you can do lots of things with kernels, and you can also understand the regularization properties of the norm that you are using. And that will stop the lecture today.